Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today.
Sure.
How are you growing and leveraging relationships with brand ambassadors around the world to build the Coca-Cola brand?
Well, probably the best example of us leveraging relationships with brand ambassadors is our Facebook fan page, where we have almost 23 million fans. We sort of count that as a distinct responsibility when you get to some scale. We consider ourselves equal to the weight of one member of that fan page. So while we have to curate a great experience, we try not to overstep our role, and we really believe in a fans first mentality where it's really our fans community, and they rise up and advocate within one another and support each other as ambassadors of the brand. So that's one way.
How do you sort of balance the relationship with them in terms of managing I'm losing.
Okay.
It's okay. I realize I'm asking you questions that's not on here. Basically, I'm interested in how you manage that to give them so much control and still make it a place that's safe and good and building your brand.
So I think the brand's responsibility in social media particularly is to curate that experience, but not in a heavy-handed way. Okay. So yes, we've got to take the porn off the site and off the wall and that sort of thing. That's a responsibility, and if we didn't do that, the fans wouldn't be there. So our responsibility is to curate the community so that the community can gather and have the dialogue. So we kind of put those, put that safety net around it, but we don't overstep our role in the dialogue and in the narrative. We try to provoke conversation, we try to fuel it from time to time, but it's really the content and the expression of our fans that fuels the page over time.
Great. What are some of the biggest challenges in talking to a global audience in this way?
Well, I think more and more as we sort of talk about this notion of the world being flat, consumers around the world, we sort of see horizontal subsegments now. So a teen in New York is much more like a teen in Hong Kong than perhaps a teen in New York is like the generation above them. I think you can start to horizontally segment, and so teens being the lifeblood of our company, that's very important to us to have that ongoing dialogue and engagement with them. And there's a lot of similarity, and there's a lot of desire and ambition from teens today to be global citizens and to connect with teens around the world. So it's actually one way that we can enable that conversation because we are in 206 countries.
You talked about the difference between an expression and an impression today. Mm-hmm. Can you go through that and explain what that means? So
impressions, I think, are going to be, they're sort of the fundamental connective tissue for how we look at all of our investments and all of our marketing. We understand what impressions are, but by definition, impressions are not a level of engagement. They can't give me anything other than you might have seen it, you might have not seen it. And as we sort of start to understand this importance of engagement with brands, and that's been driven a lot by the digital space, we can get to a very big sort of differential between you saw it and then you spent time with it. Spending time with it obviously has a much deeper ROI and is much more important to us. And so if you choose to upload content, if you choose to pass along content, if you choose to comment, if you choose to view something, all of those things say you're choosing to spend your time with our brand. And we not only feel a responsibility to do that, but obviously we get a benefit when you do it.
Right. You also spoke about mobile being a top priority.
It is.
And that also echoed what Eric Schmidt was talking about last night. Why do you see mobile as being so important, and how do you leverage it?
Well, The Economist last year, the staggering stat, every 4 seconds one baby is born and 15 mobile phones are sold. Wow. So the sheer penetration of mobile and us thinking about it as a medium and a way to communicate with consumers and the closeness of it, the personalization of it, it's never far from any of us. We always have our mobile phones. Tell us as marketers, we have to be there. We have to figure it out. Now, we have to do it respectfully and appropriately and in the right way so that consumers will want us there and will invite us there. Obviously, the control doesn't sit with us. The control sits with the consumer. So again, it's back to developing storytelling and content that is powerful and that consumers want to engage with.
Okay. One thing that I'm asking a number of people is what kind of keeps you up at night with the interactive industry? What worries you? And then what would your hope be as a solution for that concern?
I think, there are a lot of things that keep me up at night. In a good way, though. I mean, part of it is that there's so much change. It's so exciting to be in marketing right now that, I'm up at night just thinking of all the things I want to do, right? Not just me personally, but that our teams can do and that our company can do and our brands can do. And so it's tremendously exciting. Off the bat of that, though, there's exposure in that. We talked about, in earned media, as a company, we have to get much more comfortable with not controlling the dialogue and participating. We have to be much more comfortable with being transparent. We have to be much more comfortable with sharing our assets, sharing the very core of who we are and having an openness to engage in that dialogue. And that's a difficult capability change. So I think the thing that probably keeps me up the most at night is feeling like we've done enough to enable our marketers who are around the world, 2,700 marketers around the world, done enough to help them have the right capability so that they're making the right decisions and leaning in the right areas. And so, as a global steward of the brand, sort of in a central position, that's our responsibility as the center to help enable the disproportionate amount of marketers who are in the markets, who are in the countries, making it happen on the ground. Our job is to help them be as ready as they can be, and I always want to feel like we're doing enough to do that.
Great. How are we on time?
6:20.
Oh, great. How do you approach advertising differently, the interactive advertising for developing markets?
Well, developing and emerging markets, that's actually sort of dovetails back to mobile, because mobile penetration it's so amazing. So in India, 10 million new mobile phones every month. Now, these are very basic phones. This is where we have to not take our Western lens and apply it. So in India, these are text-based, very simple phones, maybe prepaid, sort of something similar to that. So we have to have very simple ways of engaging and communicating with consumers in emerging and developing markets over mobile, particularly. I think that's one of the ways we can really make some inroads with our marketing is through mobile.
Is it challenging to have a very brand building message on a feature phone?
Well, I think where Coca-Cola is at its best is when we do the balance of brand love and brand value. And so, we try to manifest both in the market. So we'll call that an extrinsic message, your emotional relationship with the brand, and your intrinsic message, which is your functional relationship. You need to get hydrated. And we try and bring those both to the market in the right ways. And so, a lot of times there might be something that might engender more of your love for the brand. At the same time, there might be a program that we're doing which is, coupon-based or redemption-based and directly driving your purchase of the brand. And we try and do both of those in good and equal measure.
Great. So is there anything new and exciting you're working on that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, it sounds surprising to some, but we're now working on the London 2012 Games, which we have to have that sort of planning in our calendars, because we then go to our customers, like the McDonald's of the world, to engage in those programs with us. And so, we've got those plans underway. I think the interesting thing about it is, so we're 18 months out or 17 months out from the games. We like to be very planful. We've got a lot thought out. We've got a lot of the content that we want to do. But at the same time, we're very clear. 17 months from now, there's going to be something else. Couldn't tell you what it's going to be, but there's going to be something. None of us could have sort of expected some of the explosion on some of the new interactive spaces. And so we know we've got to be very planful, we've got to be very, very flexible so that we can take advantage of whatever those things are by the time we get to 2012.
That's tricky, I imagine.
Yeah. But it's I think it's emblematic of this as we talked about, this liquid and link, this landscape, this ecosystem that's moving so rapidly. It is causing us to sort of rethink, reconsider how we approach the marketplace.
Now, you might not be able to answer this question, but as we talk about change, and you talked about, thinking about change and having to be flexible for change and thinking about all the different things you can do, is there anything that would make it easier to manage this level of constant evolution? Like a tool or?
There are tools out there. So we have a tool on Facebook that lets us do a lot of sort of the back-end management of it. It's fantastic, and it helps us sort of see what a lot of markets are doing. We can aggregate what a lot of markets are doing. Those things you have to have, because I think Coke's scale is its benefit, but it could also be its demise if we don't aggregate. You can just as easily disaggregate across 206 countries, and you've done yourself no favor. So we're at our best when we aggregate our scale for good, but leave room for local relevancy, cultural relevance at the local level. So we sort of talk about the combination of global scale and local relevance is very, very important to how we work. I think, the main thing we're going to have to get in and under really is this capability, is ensuring that our marketers are ready to participate, not try and control, but participate in this ongoing dialogue and narrative with consumers. That's what we've all got to be ready and skilled for, and we're all learning as quickly as possible.
Great. I think this is good.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Willow.